So as mentioned, I'm a co-founder and chief science officer of 12. And at 12, we're asking the question really, what does the future of fuels look like? And fuels that can get us into space, but also fuels that can take us around the planet. And to think about the future of fuels, there's really two assumptions that we have. And one assumption about the future is that we as humans, embodied humans, are going to want to gather together in rooms like this in the future. And we want to see and touch each other. We don't want to just have our encapsulated brains, our digital brains and digital twins going out there having all the fun. We want to go and travel as well. The second assumption that we have is that we want to do so in a clean environment, that we don't want to generate net emissions, that we want to have the efficiency and effectiveness that, say, electrification could bring. And so, with those two assumptions in mind, we are looking to build electric fuels specifically for aviation and for the future of spaceflight. And so, what does that like? Why would we do that, and what does that look like? So, we've already looked at electrifying vehicles on the ground. There we go. We've done electrification for our ground vehicles, and we've done so by taking out the liquid fuels that are about 78 pounds and adding in batteries that are about 1,000 pounds. And even though that additional weight, does need to be transported, but you can do so with a car by reducing the materials made by the car is made of. Taking out the internal combustion engine and electric engine weighs a lot less. But for flight, that's not really possible. Um, for power density reasons and for because of the drag and so forth and safety factors, you would need to 50x the amount of batteries you would have on a plane if you wanted to electrify it in the way that we're electrifying vehicles. So at 12, we just asked the question, like, what if we electrify the fuels? Could we have that same benefit of a clean future, clean burning aviation flight and still be able to grow our economy and grow our ability to fly? And we also look at this for the future of space. So it just so happens that 95%, over 95% of the atmosphere on Mars is CO2. And there's water that's been found on Mars, and you can make electricity either through nuclear or solar. And so we can make methane, which is a known rocket fuel. We can make other carbon products such as polymers. We can also make oxygen so humans could breathe. And the Mars is just my favorite planet, but certainly the moon has CO2 and water and so forth. So you could send these electrolyzers, these little reactors and manufacturing boxes up and make these fuels anywhere in space where those fundamental blocks of CO2, water, and electricity production are there. So what does that really mean, though, when we say, how we're making e-fuels? So right now we make what we call very linear fuels, where we pull these hydrocarbons out of the ground that have been built over millions of years by the Earth's crust, by high pressures, high temperatures, and we burn them in the air in a kind of a linear fashion. But we're saying, what if we make a circular version? What if we take CO2 from the air and we take water and we make hydrogen from that water, combine it with a more reactive form of CO2 with electricity, and we make this jet fuel and fly in the same planes we currently use as a drop-in replacement for existing jet fuel. And we should, in theory, be able to continue to fly to grow our economy, but do so in a very clean way. And so we basically are looking to be in harmony with nature. And so we call our process industrial photosynthesis, because in the same way that trees here are converting carbon dioxide, water, and sunlight into sugars for their own growth and development, we're doing the same thing in an industrial setting where we're taking CO2, water, and electricity and converting that into useful molecules. And our core technology, which you see in the foreground, that called our membrane electrode assembly, and our commercial size of that is about the footprint of a checked-in suitcase, and at a full stack. And that kind of checked-in suitcase size stack would have the CO2 conversion power of about 37,000 trees. So you can imagine having all of these industrial forests that are out there converting CO2 into different molecules and materials, and specifically jet fuel is our flagship product. So what does this look like in kind of a cartoon fashion? So again, we're just taking electricity, converting CO2 into CO. We convert water into hydrogen. Then we run hydrogen and CO into a Fischer-Tropsch reactor. And that Fischer-Tropsch reactor makes a hydrocarbon blend. And that hydrocarbon blend is then distilled into a jet fuel cut. We can also make diesel, we can make gasoline, We can also make a naphtha blend, which can then be made into various materials and products, even materials and products that are in this room. And so we're currently building that. And our core technology here is that commercial size stack, where again, that's that suitcase sized system that has at full capacity would have over 37,000 trees CO2 conversion power. And we put that in a shipping container and we put all the pumps and piping around that. And then we're deploying that shipping container right now. We're building a plant in Washington State. And so we're doing a lot of the civil works for that plant, and we're sending equipment that we had shop fabricated to that site. We're sending our shipping container size system and our stacks there. And once that plant is open within the course of a year, we'll have regular flights that we'll be sending with our fuel. And these flights will be on Alaska Airlines, which is our first partner. So we're really excited about having regular sustainable aviation fuel flights. And we're also asking the question, what does the refinery of the future look like? How do we continue this? We can imagine a world in which solar or nuclear is used to then power these CO2 conversion devices indoors, which then makes jet fuel and other materials so that we no longer have to pull them out of the ground. And we could prepare a place in space where we could have this manufacturing and these fuels being made in the absence of humans being there or in preparation for humans. So in conclusion, we're basically looking at making fuel for the long haul, and we're really excited about this challenge and happy to talk more about the science. It didn't cram too much of it in 8 minutes, but lots of details of science and catalysis that we use to make this process possible, because CO2 is a very stubborn molecule. To convert it into anything that's useful is very challenging. So we've done a lot of experimentation along the way. So happy to talk later after this. Yeah. So right now we're cost effective with current sustainable aviation fuel, which typically comes from agriculture, so we can compete directly. And both us and sustainable aviation fuel from agriculture relies on state and federal incentives, which hopefully will still be there in the next few years to get to market. We have a plan in the next 5 to 8 years to be cost competitive with petroleum, and so we would have to do about a 2 to 3x cost reduction to get there.
Any others?
Syngas, which process is used? It's like pyrolysis?
No, we do low temperature CO2 electrolysis.
Okay, electrolysis.
So that also some benefits for that is that we can couple with intermittent electricity. We can be a controllable load. So the previous talk about Bitcoin miners, like we can be a Bitcoin miner in that sense of being a controllable load, and being deployed and not having to have high reliability of electricity because our process is low temperature.